Welcome to another combat mission video. Today we're back in Normandy for the third and final round of the Utah Beach tournament, with me playing as the Germans. Round 2 didn't go so well for me, so my confidence is a bit shaken going into the final games, but this scenario doesn't feature any tanks, so it's already looking better for me. The Germans have flooded the fields around a farm at a road junction in order to prevent the Allied forces from advancing with armor, so the American forces will be conducting a probe of the farm. Their goal is not to capture the farm, but instead to reach a series of checkpoints approaching the farm and some of the buildings along the outskirts. They will also score points for spotting MG42 and Panzerschreck teams, while the Germans are trying to hold ground and inflict casualties, while taking minimal casualties themselves. Both sides are well stocked with off-map mortars and target reference points. My objectives are to hold Bridge A and Bridge B, as well as the entire farm area. I've set up a similar defense at each bridge. A couple of squads split into fire teams in foxholes, an MG42 in foxholes on the road covering the end of the bridge, as well as mines and target reference points on both ends of the bridge. I positioned a fire team and a forward observer farther out from the farm to help spot any incoming infantry. I don't expect them to hold off an attack. Their job is to act as a sort of tripwire to alert me of where the enemy is coming so I can respond accordingly. The rest of my forces are in buildings around the farm, ready to reinforce any area that is put under pressure by the attackers. My overall plan: spot the enemy where they're coming in and reinforce it with as many troops as I can, and try to counter any push that they're making. In the opening moments of the game, over at Bridge B on the south side of the map, a couple American riflemen are heading across the bridge. Looks like a two-man scout team that's been split off. There are mines at the end of this bridge, but these guys aren't going to hit them. What they are going to run into, though, is a whole lot of MG42 and MP40 fire, and both of those soldiers are going to go down pretty quick. Over at the other bridge, Bridge A, I have all my forces set up in their foxholes, and what they see right away is a mortar. So this is a 60mm on-map mortar that is going to lob a shell, and that's going to make a little bit of light, and my troops are going to start opening fire in the direction that it came from. So at this range in the dark, not terribly effective, but it may suppress the mortar. Looks like it's not doing a great job because it's going to get another shell off, but so far no damage to any of my troops from them. My luck doesn't hold for too long as the next mortar round comes down and injures a soldier. And now the one vehicle on this entire map makes an appearance. It is an unarmed Jeep, and it tries to drive forward towards the bridge but comes under fire. And being just an unarmed Jeep, the crew takes casualties pretty much right away. And the remaining driver panics and tries to drive away from the machine gun fire, and the only place he can find to hide is the water over there. So he's just going to drive his Jeep directly into the water to evade German fire. Probably not the best place to hide, but it's really the only place he has at the moment. There were, of course, more American infantry there than simply the mortar team and the Jeep, and the infantry begins to return fire. I've spotted a few of them, but not all of them, and I'm currently taking fire from some unspotted infantry in the hedges, and my team in the foxholes are going to get taken out pretty quick. Suffering 3 casualties in rapid succession, and the final soldier hiding in the foxhole there has broken, and he's going to decide he no longer wants to be where he is, and he's going to get up and make a run for it. After those quick initial engagements, things have calmed down a little, but I now know the location of some American troops, so I'm going to call in a mortar strike on them to hopefully take care of them. So over on the left, we see a mortar round come down, and that's going to be a spotting round from my opponent. It looks like wherever he's targeting, he doesn't have a TRP down, so he's having to spot the rounds manually as they come down, but you can see my mortar strike, on the other hand, is coming down on the TRP at the end of the bridge, so it was incredibly quick to call in, no spotting rounds required, and it's just going to start hammering the American position where I saw them hiding in the hedges. So hopefully that is going to do a pretty significant amount of damage, since it looks like they're all pretty clumped up hiding behind that hedge. So my barrage comes to an end. It was a short one because I didn't know how many enemy troops were there, so I didn't want to waste a lot of mortar ammo. So I gave them a small barrage. However, another spotting round comes in, this one landing much closer to my troops. So I have a pretty good idea that he's going to start bombarding the end of the bridge. And yet another spotting round comes in, this time deeper in the town. So I think that's another barrage, because the original barrage starts coming down immediately after. So this is definitely targeted around my troops at the end of the bridge, and just hoping they're going to keep their heads down. And you can see a couple hits almost directly into their foxholes, not causing a lot of damage, until those couple come down and kill one of my troops. But overall, these are a lot of very, very close hits, and no casualties really being taken except for the one at this point. So extremely lucky on my troops' part. Oh, there goes another one. But they are taking extremely limited casualties from mortar rounds basically landing directly on top of them. And as that barrage continues to come down, we can see a lot of the shells are starting to land in the water and on the bridge, so farther away from my troops. Always good to see mortar rounds impacting the water instead of into my foxholes, but my luck does run out a little bit here as a mortar round goes directly inside a foxhole, killing two, and then same thing happens on a squad further back, getting more casualties there. Another American spotting round is going to come in onto the other side of the farm this time, and we're going to see a couple shells from my own barrage coming in on the bridge. I've set it to harass, so they're going to fire a couple rounds every 15 to 30 seconds. My goal there is just to prevent any American soldiers from attempting to make a crossing. Right, turn 10 starts up. We're about a third of a way through the allotted time, and there's still some spotting rounds coming in on the left side of the farm around Bridge B. I'm expecting the barrage to start fairly soon because it's been a couple turns of spotting rounds. He must have put his TRPs mostly along the farm itself and not on either side of the bridge, since he's having to call these in without them, and that's why we're seeing spotting rounds. And yeah, there it is. Here comes the barrage. So hoping the foxholes do as good of a job as they did on the other side, and most of my troops escape harm. And then moments later after that barrage starts, we're going to start seeing a barrage come down on the other side again, and this one didn't have spotting rounds, so he does have a TRP somewhere on the right-hand side there. And I'm going to start taking some casualties from this, unfortunately. So with the mortar barrages in full swing and taking some casualties across my force, I feel like the main attack is going to come soon, so I'm moving one of my HQ teams up to the next set of hedges. I want them to get a look into that flooded field there to see if there's anything coming. And sure enough, as they reach the hedges and manage to look through, there's some American troops making a push across the water. So I have spotted where they're attacking from, or at least where some of them are attacking from, and I can start putting a little bit of fire onto them with that HQ team, but probably not going to do a fantastic job of holding them up for very long. But my main goal was to identify where they're going to be attacking from. And after the mortar barrages end, a little bit of silence goes across the battlefield here. The Americans that I'd spotted in the flooded field appear to have taken cover, so not getting anything else from them. Yeah, overall a really quiet turn compared to the last couple. I do have some infantry in a set of foxholes right on the opposite side of the hedges from that flooded field. Here we can see their view as some American infantry start to come through. So the squad leader there with his MP40 going to make pretty short work of the soldier that he could see. Over on the other side of the flooded field, my HQ team that initially made the spots is still set up in position, and some American infantry are going to come around the corner and come under fire. And my squad is going to easily be able to take care of them as well. And over to Bridge B, looks like we're going to get another attempt to make a crossing. Opponent probably hoping that the mortars have done a very good job of taking out my defenders. Fortunately for him, most of my infantry survived. The MG42 on the road, shooting one guy and failing to take down the second guy. However, he is going to stumble upon a mine. Overall, I feel like I have Bridge A pretty secure with the amount of infantry I have around it. However, there are going to be some 60mm mortars coming down, trying to dislodge my machine gun team that is set up to cover the bridge. They aren't going to be terribly accurate, and they're going to miss a lot of the shots, but it is going to suppress my troops a bit. And you can see down at the bottom of the screen there, I'm starting to move infantry over. Since I know that there's some American infantry coming through the flooded field, I'm repositioning some troops to help cover it, and calling in mortar strikes on the flooded field as well. So as those 60mm mortars continue to rain down, I'm going to answer with some mortar fire of my own, with my 81mm off map getting ready to slam down into the flooded field. Should be arriving any moment now. And here it comes. So a heavy and long barrage coming in. Unfortunately, it is very close to my own troops, and I do end up injuring some of my own soldiers. I get 2 injuries, but no casualties, so that was kind of nice. And we can see at least 1 American casualty, but really hoping that he had been staging the majority of his force in that field, and I just mortared a large chunk of his attacking force. But I don't really have a way to verify that right now. It'll be a while before I can get some troops into that field to take a look. If I even want to risk going in there, I could just hold out where I am. So I can see the American 60mm mortars. I just don't really have any teams that can put effective fire down on them. So instead of revealing my troops, I'm having them not fire. You can see it does score a direct hit there on one of my teams, causing a few casualties. Back towards Bridge B, it looks like the Americans have decided not to attempt crossing the bridge itself, and I'm now starting to get some partial contacts of them crossing through the water beneath the bridge. With the 60mm mortars still coming down to suppress my troops a little bit, the American infantry have made it to the other side of the water and taken up a position in those low hedges, and my infantry in the first set of foxholes is going to start trying to engage them. Unfortunately, they are a green squad, and they are not going to do a very good job of fighting back, taking a hit from a grenade and then coming under small arms fire, and they've decided they're going to cower instead of returning fire. Fortunately, my MG42 is going to get in on the action once it has a chance to make the spot and rotate. And I get more teams to start joining in the fire. I've got another fire team just off to the right there that's going to start engaging and putting some casualties onto the Americans. Crossing along the river instead of over the bridge was a much better attack plan, since I have the bridge so well covered. Back towards Bridge A, those 60mm mortars have been a pain for quite some time, so I'm going to take some action to remove them with some mortar fire of my own. And you can see another infantry squad Americans tries to check out Bridge A and comes under fire from some of my teams that survived in the foxholes, and they are also swiftly eliminated. But hopefully this silences those mortars, because they've been a little bit annoying for the past little while. Looks like some American infantry have decided they want to make an attempt at crossing the bridge itself again. And I'm going to see them creep up along the side of the hedges there. And he is going to come under fire from that MG42 that is still set up in foxholes along the road. And the American soldier there is going to decide maybe this isn't a good idea and run away and take cover. A little bit farther to the side of that, it looks like some American infantry are trying a much wiser method of crossing the river. They're going to be going wide of where my positions are, where my foxholes can't see, and they're going to try and cross there, but they've been spotted by a team that I had farther up in the next field over. So they come under a little bit of fire as they try to make their crossing. The first American soldiers that made it across are continuing to take fire in their small hedge and continuing to take casualties, so they're pretty well pinned down after they cleared out my first set of foxholes. They can still see more troops coming across the water. They are coming under a little bit of fire as my troops catch glimpses of them. They were a little bit too far from the TRP for me to hit the little island they're crossing, plus they're moving across it, so I didn't feel like a mortar strike was going to be very effective here, just letting my small arms handle it. Here's a bit of a wider view of the same area. You can see there's plenty of American infantry contacts starting to move along the water. I do have the team set up in a small field on the far right there, waiting to fire at anything that is going to come up around the edge of the hedges down there. The rest of the map has been surprisingly quiet. I feel like I've probably got a lot of kills with my mortar strikes over on the opposite side, and there's not really been a lot of activity. Seems like most of the effort is coming around Bridge B. So I'm having my machine gun teams continue to fire into the hedges that I've been seeing the Americans move along. My goal there is just to pin them in place and prevent them from getting to where they want to go. It definitely looks like they are going to be moving farther to the side and try to come in through a different field. You can also see over on the left there, I've got an HQ team and another squad starting to move down. I'm getting a little bit nervous about the amount of contacts that I've been seeing heading in this direction, so I'm starting to bring some reinforcements over from the rest of the farm, where nothing has been happening, to get them to reinforce these couple fields, make it a little bit harder for any Americans to get across. It's a bit of a difficult position for the Americans to be in, because I'm pretty sure they're out of mortar ammo at this point, and pushing across these fields with MG42 teams in the opposite hedges is going to be very difficult. They really don't have enough troops to be able to get the fire superiority needed to do this. However, on the other side of the bridge, I am going to start seeing some American infantry contacts on that side as well. This could have been the guy that was checking out the road and then ran away and disappeared on me. They may be trying to probe in from the other side. However, I do have some infantry in a foxhole that's going to start shooting at them as they come across, so hopefully I'll be able to pin them down and stop them from making a lot of progress. I've turned the trees off to give a little bit of a better view of the farm itself, so you can see my troops shuffling around in the background as I'm repositioning them to try and counter this possible threat of American soldiers coming across the farm fields. And as the contacts are moving along, you can see machine gun fire chasing them the entire way. And at the same time, almost moving in parallel, are my teams on the road behind their own hedges, running down to take positions where I think the Americans are going to stop. And I'm pretty sure they're going to stop at the end of the hedge line, because there's not really any other cover, and if they try to make it across that little stream, they're going to be completely exposed. So I'm sort of expecting them to stop in the plowed field there and try and cross the plowed field. So that is where I am lining up all my troops that I've repositioned. There's only 8 minutes left in the game, so the Americans are rapidly running out of time to make a push for their objectives. So as the Americans continue their run down the hedges towards the corner of the field, my troops are doing the exact same thing in parallel on the other side, moving down to position themselves so they have a clear line of sight along that entire hedge line to the corner the Americans are coming around. And sure enough, here come the first American troops around that corner, as my infantry is setting up in the hedges to be able to counter them. And there we go, the troops are going to start firing back and forth at each other. The Americans hopefully relatively exposed on their side of the hedge, versus my troops quite well protected behind the tall hedge lines. And you can see a little bit up in the upper section of the map there, is still shooting at the infantry that's trying to come across the other side of the bridge. They're not really having much luck making any moves forward, by machine guns pinning them down pretty easily. The long silence on the other side of the map towards the flooded field finally comes to an end, with American infantry wading through the water and being spotted by my HQ team. Americans crossing directly into line of sight of some MP40 fire, and that is probably not going to go very well for them, since they are slowed by the water and at pretty close range here. I am fully in position to counter any enemy infantry that are coming up along the small hedge line adjacent to the plowed field, as my HQ team and my fire team for another squad begin to open fire at the exposed Americans. The Americans are going to take some casualties from this, as they are not very well protected from this angle. So the push from this direction should be pretty effectively contained. I don't think they have enough firepower to make any headway against all the teams I've set up. And moving back over to the field again, first of the American infantry goes down. I do lose a soldier as well to some return fire. And I'm going to need to start moving some additional troops over on this side, because I don't know what size of American force I could be dealing with here. But the second man that I saw there is taken out, and here comes my reinforcing HQ team moving up to join the hedge line, and they'll be able to get a bit of a different angle as they look through, so they might spot some more American infantry as they do so. But so far, it seems to be pretty clear. And there's some more infantry coming through the little gap at the fence line there where it's been flooded. So they're coming through that little gap at the hedges, and they're rapidly going to come under fire from two different angles from my HQ teams there, which I believe each have 2 MP40s, so they should have a pretty good amount of firepower. And the Americans are pretty much defenseless in the water. The American infantry are continuing to move across the water, not stopping to return fire, not trying to run away, just surging forward right into the waiting sites of a lot of automatic weapon fire here. And it is not going to go well for the Americans. We can see they're starting to take significant casualties going down in the water there. And they just continue to run forward and get massacred as they advance. The first squad is completely wiped out. The second one is now taking fire as they come across. We can see casualties being inflicted. One guy managed to fire, looked like a single rifle round in retaliation, but they're just getting gunned down as another squad goes down and another one comes into view. A little painful to watch this, just getting massacred in the water like that. Back over at Bridge A, some American infantry is going to make another probe of the bridge to see if the defenders have been taken out. Both of my MG42 teams that I put in foxholes along the roads watching the bridges did an amazing job of preventing anything from crossing. And we see here that one American soldier is very quickly going to get suppressed. Very good positioning on these guys. They just did a fantastic job of locking down the bridges. Same with the ones on the other side. And a wider view of the engagement that's going on around Bridge B. Lots of fire still going back and forth across the fields. I do take one casualty in the middle there, but nothing that's terribly concerning given the amount of troops I have. And I can start to see that there's another mass of American infantry around the hedges, right around where they would have deployed. So I don't know if they're going to make a run for the bridge or not. It looks like the American infantry that I had started to spot up along the deployment road is going to make a run for the opposite side of the bridge, where I've seen just a small amount of infantry. My machine gunners are going to be harassing them the entire way as they try to make it down the open field and onto the little mini islands there. I have this avenue pretty well covered off with squads in the barn and some foxholes and up in the second floor buildings, so I'm fairly confident that it's not going to be much of a threat, but I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time handling it as the infantry is attempting to approach. Back in the flooded fields, the American infantry is continuing to come across more squads attempting to force their way over the water, more squads continuing to come under fire from my 2 HQ teams. One issue I'm starting to run into, though, is both of these teams are getting quite low on ammunition. They've been firing for an extended period of time, and they're getting down to their last few magazines in their MP40s here, so it may actually become a bit of a problem shortly if they run out of ammo and all these Americans are not dead. But it looks like they're doing a pretty good job of stopping most of them from getting across the water, and whoever makes it is probably going to have very poor morale, given the fact that what looks like most of a platoon has now been shot to pieces trying to get across this one little stretch of water. Some of the American infantry has made it across the water into the hedge, and I have another fire team moving up. These guys have an MG42 and a full load of ammo, so they'll be able to reinforce the two HQ teams that have pretty much run themselves dry at this point. So that new squad is going to get in position and start firing the MG42 at the American that they have spotted along the hedge line. I think that may have been the only guy that made it across, and I took a closer look at him because his gun was a little bit weird. He is armed only with a pistol, so he is hiding in a bush, firing his sidearm. And while I admire his bravery, that is not going to end well for him. Checking back in around Bridge B, where the Americans are making a last final effort to try and get across the water from the opposite side of the bridge of the farm fields, which didn't really go so well for them. This also is not going so well for them. I have several squads in position to cover off this approach, and the Americans find themselves under some pretty heavy machine gun fire and automatic weapon fire as they are attempting to make the crossing. And as we come into turn 28, just a couple turns left to go, but this is the last one that I am going to show, because at this point my opponent has probably realized that he doesn't have a lot of chance of getting to any of the objectives and stopped really making any attempts to advance. So the last couple turns were more of pretty much what you're seeing right here. Some sporadic fire going back and forth, but no real major pushes coming in. So it seems that my defense plan has worked, and all of my defenders have held their positions until the end. And with that, the game comes to an end with a German army major victory. I had 94 men okay, 10 men killed, and 11 men wounded, versus the Americans with 34 men okay, 41 men killed, and 31 men wounded. For my targets, I did not kill enough infantry, but I did score full points for pioneers, and I took too many casualties. So that's where I lost my points, but otherwise 1,872 out of a possible 2,000 points. And the final map positions, just a few scattered American teams back in their deployment zones, and not a whole lot managed to get across the water. Those mortars, a little sad to see those still alive. I thought I would have taken them out. They were certainly one of the things that gave me a fair amount of trouble early on in the game, and I had thought that my big mortar barrage in counter battery on them would have done the trick, but they seem to have pulled through, but I guess they stopped firing because they ran out of ammo. Either way, that wraps up the combat mission Battle for Normandy Utah Beach tournament. All 6 games should now be available on the channel, so if you haven't watched the other games, please take a look at them because they are all there and available. And thanks for watching, everyone, and catch you in the next one.